Everybody act tough when they up.
It's the Boristurk podcast. We are back. Today, we are going to be getting into some predictions for the 2025-26 NBA season, specifically the next guys and teams to do certain things. We've got some fun categories for you, as per usual. But first, I wanted to tee Max up. Just attended the California Classic, which is an incredible little 4-team event. You've got the Summer League Lakers, Spurs, Heat, and Warriors, who the Warriors specifically didn't have a single player who was on either of our radars. But Max, take us through your California Classic experience.
Yeah. First, as an aside, both of us are going to be sounding extra crispy today, I think, on the mics. Drew's got a new mic, and me, after 2 years of having my current mic, figured out how to position it in front of my face correctly. So you may hear that coming through. But yeah, the California Classic, it is the Frosh Soft team of Summer League. Like if California Classic is like Frosh Soft, maybe the Salt Lake one is JV, because like you still get Edgecombe playing in that and Ace Bailey's playing in that. There's some real like storylines there. And then Vegas is the varsity in terms of Summer League. California Classic, I mean, Bronny sat the first game, so that your second round pick from last year sitting the first game, that's kind of the level of prestige that we're talking about here. Carter Bryant, the Spurs lottery pick, didn't play the back-to-back. He like rested the second game. Dylan Harper didn't play any of the games. And yeah, but it was a cool experience. I went kind of trying to see if I could meet anyone. By the way, the get-in prices, absurd for the level of basketball that was being played. Like the cheapest ticket was like $55, which there's some Warriors tickets during the season you can get in the upper bowl for $55 to go watch these summer Warriors play, where I know a lot of basketball players. I have not heard of a single person on this team except for Evan Mobley's brother, Isaiah Mobley. Other than that, I couldn't pick any of the guys on the team out of a lineup. And then you have the Heat, where like they've got Khalil Ware. That's like kind of the attraction there. The Lakers with Bronny and Dalton Connect, who looked awful, by the way, but we're not going to overreact to Summer League. And then
unless you want to cash some Yakachonis checks, in which case, it's the classic Summer League. If it affirmed how you felt about a guy, we should probably read into it. But I'm not going to let you. We're going to give Kasparis some time in Miami.
Exactly. Any day. Anyways, first day I went, full transparency, I was kind of hungover and I didn't like fully soak it in probably as well as I could, but it was a good feel out session to see like, oh, if I want to be around like the proverbial room where it happens, I need to have access to the court. So, first day I was sitting up there kind of helpless as I watched like Mark Spears, the sort of great journalist, talking to R.C. Buford, seeing like Scott Brooks, some of the Lakers assistants walking around. So day 2, I was like, all right, I need to get myself seats that are like not courtside, but like a row back from courtside, basically. And then I had access to the court where I could walk around. I was like standing behind Scott Brooks for a good 15 minutes. He was talking to like the rest of the Lakers staff. Caron Butler, who works with the Heat now, came over and said what's up to everybody. I randomly met someone who turned out to be Bronny James's agent. I had assumed wrongly that Bronny James was repped by Rich Paul. He's not. He's repped by a dude named Max Hazard, who works for Clutch Sports, who I just sort of had a chance encounter with. And yeah, it was a fun experience, just kind of meet some people. And I don't know if I'll do it again in the future. If I do, I'm definitely getting courtside access again. Maybe I'll even try to get a media credential. I don't know how high that bar is, but yeah, definitely the absolute JV of summer basketball, but still fun to like have Bronny James have his sick dunk literally 6 feet in front of me.
Yep. And the Boristurk boys, we've been riding some 2025 draft afterglow. I know even before the draft, you had a pretty fun live you did with Chris Persianen over on the, what is it, Basketball A to Z. I forget the name of the show.
All things NBA, something like that.
Yeah. Which was awesome seeing you do your thing with him. Then obviously we did our draft live, which was pretty fun, pretty successful. We got the viral clip of the Young Hansen pick, which I parlayed into an awesome Grizzlies pod with a couple guys who work for Grind City Media. So check that out on X. But yeah, it's been a really fun few weeks post NBA season. We're both complete draft junkies, and I'm excited to get into the meat and potatoes of the real summer league stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so far, the only real takeaway is VJ Edgecombe looked sick in his first game.
Yeah. Yeah. No, the athleticism translates. He looks small, but he's a gamer. I think Sixers fans should be pretty pumped about that. Any quick thoughts on the summer headline so far, whether it's the Dame buyout / stretch, the KD to Houston trade? We can start anywhere, but I felt like we should touch on those.
Yeah, the only two things that I think really impact like the title race are what Houston did and what Denver did. I think firmly positioning themselves as the second and third best teams in the league, and sort of second and third best in a vacuum title threats. Obviously, they play in the West, so like the teams in the East are going to have a better chance. But you get what I'm saying. Houston, I think, is like all they were missing was that go-to scorer in tight playoff situations where like time and time again they'd get down to the stretch of these like clutch games and it would be like, all right, in that Warriors series, Alperen Şengün, can you isolate from the top of the key against Draymond Green and get us a bucket? And it's like against a set defense where there's like Amen Thompson and Dylan Brooks on the court and Jalen Green and nobody's really like respecting the three-point shot, so to speak. They just didn't have it. And now they have KD, who is still a 28 point per game scorer, still damn near a 50, 40, 90 guy on high volume, and still one of the best isolation players in the league, where they plug him into their already massive team, where now they're going to be throwing out like 3 7-footers at a time for large stretches of the game between KD, Jabari Smith, Şengün, or KD, Şengün, Adams. They signed Capella too. Like they're going to be massive. Their defense is going to get maybe better, but probably like stay the same. Like Jalen Green and Brooks out is like one negative and one positive out. KD's a positive. So Houston, I thought, did awesome getting Dorian Finney-Smith too. And then Denver, I think, is probably, I would put even slightly above Houston with what they did, just getting even deeper. And then I think Cam Johnson is a slight upgrade or is an upgrade over Michael Porter Jr. And is better than him at basically everything except for rebounding, I'd say. So Denver already had one of the best starting fives in the league and now has a good bench. So I'd put them number 2. And then Houston just filling the only real hole they had in terms of sort of tight area scoring with KD. I think those are the two that really move the needle.
And they got off of Jalen Green. Like they found a team that was willing to take on Jalen Green. And the way the trade worked out, it kind of seems like Phoenix thinks they got an asset in Jalen Green. And
yeah,
at his contract, I'm just not sure I'm there. I love it for Houston. It just feels like a super low risk swing. Maybe swing isn't even the right word because there's just a much smaller chance now of, like you said, in a playoff game, like the ball finding the weakest link, whether it's Dylan Brooks on a poor shooting night when he is kind of like trying to shoot his way out of a hole, or Jalen Green making poor decisions like he did for a lot of last year, giving me headaches anytime I was rooting for Houston. So it was really just Jalen Green, Dylan Brooks, and Kaman Malawach they gave up, and they get Kevin Durant. And my fear was whoever traded for Kevin Durant was going to be like mortgaging way too much future for a guy who might only have another year or two at this level, making the kind of money he's still making. But if that was the price for Houston, I think it's a no-brainer. When it comes to Denver, I don't want to completely dismiss MPJ as a basketball player, but he at times has been like their Jalen Green, just inconsistency in other ways. Like the shooting is always a threat with him, but his defense ebbs and flows in extreme ways. I used to think of him as like a really competitive rebounder, but I didn't really see him grab many competitive rebounds in their run. And look, the Denver pushing OKC to 7 felt really special at the time. It only aged better. And, in retrospect, like Denver was a lot closer to the mountaintop this year than I thought they were going to be, than teams in the West that I thought might have been better than them this year.
Yeah.
So I'm really glad they have Cam Johnson. He's going to be incredible, playing off of, the heliocentric Jokic ball. And I also just think Cam Johnson can put it on the deck probably more than he gets credit for, because nobody's been watching Brooklyn. We probably forget that Cam Johnson he's more than a specialist. And in playoff settings, MPJ had been reduced to a specialist and should not be making anywhere near the 39, 40 million he made last year that he's due to make moving forward. So love it for Denver. I'm bummed for the Nuggets that Valanciunas doesn't seem to want to stay in the NBA. I don't have an update on that. I'm not sure whether he's going to Europe or not, but
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's in his hands. If he doesn't want to play for the Nuggets, he's not going to have to. I don't know what the legal financial implications will be, but I did love the idea that they could, give Jokic a couple minutes of rest here and there in the regular season. And then also maybe have an interesting 2 big lineup in situations where you could get away with that defensively. So I'm bummed for Denver, but there are still names out there. I haven't seen them linked to Al Horford, but they're definitely fives out there that they could go and get if they want to have a 2 big look or just some regular season insurance for Jokic. So We'll see. Denver isn't done yet. I love that they just have at least some version of Bruce Brown, because I was rewatching Bruce Brown 2023 finals highlights, and that dude was so electric. I knew he was great, but rewatch the athleticism in that playoff run. I hope he can still channel that, because he's been dealing with injury after injury. Indiana, Toronto, New Orleans. It's just crazy, from the championship parade and Michael Malone saying Brucey B is not going anywhere to the couple of years that dude has had just journeying around the league. It would be really cool to see him find his footing again on the team where his career kind of took off.
Yeah. And he's only 28. He's not old. And he's a guy who has flashed when he's been around other great players. He's not a great player, but when he's been around great players, in Brooklyn, when he's playing off of KD, Harden, Kyrie, that's kind of where he made his name for himself as kind of a poor man's Draymond. And then he goes to Denver and sort of pops there as well. So he's someone who just knows how to kind of amplify great teams and great players. And I kind of fully expect him to get back to maybe not peak Bruce Brown, but certainly a more than qualified 6-man. And yeah, in their finals run, he was closing over MPJ a lot of the time in their big units, or closing over KCP. Yeah. He was a guy who they really viewed as a 6th starter. And just to have him back, Hardaway is a way better option as a bench scoring guard and off-ball player than they had in Strother or whoever else they were relying on. Hunter Tyson, he's just a way better option. He was he wasn't a great starter for the Pistons, but he was fine. He serviced, and I think he's a good off-ball player, good transition player. I think him and Jokic are going to mesh really well in terms of him getting spot-up threes and him running in transition for kind of crazy finishes, which has always been a weird quirk of his game, that he's got these maniac finishes in transition that work. And then you have hopefully Valanciunas. Peyton Watson goes back to being your 8th man, 7th man, which is a role he's much more qualified for than when he was the 6th guy in the playoffs at times last year. And then they have rookie Deron Holmes, who we'll see what he does. He's coming off an Achilles, but a lot of people liked him as a win now backup big type pick when they got him. So yeah, I think it's good chance it's the deepest team of the Jokic era, which is saying something.
Yeah, I was going to say that Deron Holmes pick that is finally conveying now, because he missed his first year. Another one of these recent Achilles injuries, which is a whole nother conversation. It just feels like Achilles are popping left and right.
Yeah.
But the Nuggets missed on Jalen Pickett. They missed on Strother, as you mentioned. They missed on Zeke Naji a couple of years ago, and they missed on Hunter Tyson. And they still managed to push one of the better teams in recent history to 7. It would be great if they could get anything from Holmes, but it just seems like around the margins, Denver is a much more complete team. And I was going to say they're getting like a lot of 23 Bruce Brown from Christian Brown, who broke out for them last year and was awesome. But like Bruce Brown, like at his best, has more off the dribble, like can break dudes down without much help. And you need as many of those guys as you can put together who can also guard their position. And if Bruce Brown's body can hold up, like you said, he's 28. Things are looking up for Denver, and I think they're going to be even more dangerous than they were last year. Let's get over to Milwaukee real quick.
Yeah.
They stretched Dame. He's making something like 22 mil a year now for a long time. It's the new Bobby Bonilla day is Damian Lillard day. And that allows them to go and get Miles Turner. What are your initial thoughts on the Miles Turner steal for Milwaukee?
My initial thought was like, oh, that's exciting. And then the more I sat with it, the more I was like, wait, so the team is just Giannis, Turner, Gary Trent, Kyle Kuzma, and like who else? Bobby Portis. I mean, Turner is like an ideal Brook Lopez replacement for Milwaukee. And I like it in that sense, in the way he fits with Giannis as a five who stretches the floor, but the cupboard is so bare. Like it does feel a bit like just kicking the can down the road of the Giannis reckoning. But at the same time, like I know Milwaukee fans are very tired of hearing about how Giannis is going to leave, because they've been hearing it since before they won the championship and almost every year since then. So I like it in the sense that it's like buying them more time to try to figure things out on the fly around Giannis, but I don't think it changes their ceiling that much for this coming year. Like they'll probably be they'll be a better defensive team. Like they should be one of the top defensive teams in the league with some of the personnel that they have, but still, like, I don't know how many players they have that I really trust in a playoff game. It's like 3 or 4, which, as we've seen this past year, is just not enough to get past like the first or second round.
Yeah, I don't think it's 4. I've never felt worse about Kyle Kuzma.
Yeah.
I actually kind of liked them taking that swing, I'll admit, because I didn't think Chris Middleton's body really gave them the ceiling they needed at this juncture. I am on board with the Dame stretch and the Miles Turner signing, and not because I think suddenly the Bucks are a real contender in the East, but simply because you have a top 3 player on earth who's 31. Don't give up yet.
Yeah.
I tweeted this, like a lot of teams would have just sort of closed up shop, sold Giannis for pieces, and faded into obscurity for a few years. And that's still definitely an option for Milwaukee. They signed Miles Turner for what I think is like 27 a year, like 26. It's something in that range. That is definitely a dealable contract. And the way I see it is, like, if you want to blow it up, you can still blow it up. This didn't change that. Dame is not an asset. Even Dame without an Achilles tear, like at the number he's getting paid at this point in his career, is not the asset that Miles Turner is at 26, 27 million. So if things go south and this team is as shallow and undangerous as they look right now on paper, trade Giannis and trade Miles Turner. And hey, you have like 22 million in dead cap. Great. If you're tanking and trying to restart, you don't really need that money anyway. Of course it hurts. Like, it's always great to do what teams like the Wizards are doing and like take on some bad like vet contracts so that you can, gain draft capital and start to accumulate like young flyers and future picks. But I don't know if the Bucks are going to suck, which I don't think they're going to trade Giannis and like be competing right away with a different outfit. I think the dead cap is not nearly as awful as it first sounds when you see the Shams bomb.
Yeah, it's not. And like sort of coming off Denver, because Denver traded away their 2032 pick unprotected to sort of offload MPJ and get Cam Cam Johnson, where like that's an asset that could be really detrimental to lose down the line. Like the Dame thing, it sort of fucks your near term future flexibility, but it's not like you're giving away picks. They don't have any more picks to give away when they're like really in the shitter in the case that Giannis leaves. So I get it from that standpoint. Yeah, I'd say like you were definitely higher on it than I was, but it is sort of a means at least of still fighting, and I do respect that part of it.
They have more trade capital right now than they did before they stretched Dame. And that's kind of where I'm at. But yeah, it definitely makes the potential rebuild a more strenuous project that would probably take more years now because of the Dame dead cap. But again, like it doesn't seem like if they trade Giannis, they're going to be needing to, get into the first or second aprons anytime soon. Who are they going to be paying maxes? Definitely not Kevin Porter Jr. Definitely not Kyle Kuzma. I'm a Ryan Rollins guy, but I don't think the ceiling is that great. So
No.
yeah, it's still dark times in Milwaukee because it's just impossible to see a path to contention in the near term. And Giannis is 31, so that probably means this is it. Whether or not he plays out his contract in Milwaukee, like it doesn't seem like they're going to be able to put together a contender for him.
Yeah, and last thing on them is like in some of the like bleakest outlooks discussions that I've heard, and Simmons and Russillo did a thing on this of like who the bleakest outlook teams are. Like they get brought up, and I don't think that's exactly right. They sort of have just like the most kind of it feels like their fate is already sealed, but they do have the golden ticket of a Giannis trade, which should deliver them like massive value, in like a similar way to Anthony Davis with New Orleans. Now they sort of squandered that, but that sort of they can hit a reset button and be in a decent situation, as you said. So I don't think it's like super bleak, but it just sort of feels like we're slowly marching towards the end of it.
Yeah, but with this new CBA, teams are so reticent to trade like blue chip assets on rookie contracts. Giannis is massively valuable, but like teams like Houston with an asset like Amen Thompson, I've talked about how I would trade him for Giannis, but I also understand how teams are talking themselves out of it. It's like we've got a lot of years of Amen making much less money, and your options just dry up super quickly when you start accumulating contracts like KD and Giannis on the same roster. But like, I don't think people say this out loud enough. Like the second apron is awful. And like the simplest detail that you can't aggregate contracts in a trade. Like, let me be clear. You can't trade two people. You can only trade one dude at a time. I mean, it makes all these trades that like used to be fun trade machine fodder just suddenly non-starters. So
yeah, let me load 5 guys into the cannon and see what I can get. Can't do that anymore.
Yeah. All right. Mike Brown to the Knicks. Anything for me?
Yeah, I'll give you my quick spiel on Mike Brown, since I know the listeners are curious. Look, when they fired Tibbs, was I like thinking, oh great, we can now go hire Mike Brown? No. Probably my best case scenario is that they would have took a swing on like an assistant, like a young hot shot who they can try to mold into the next, Mark Daigneault or Chris Finch, like one of these guys who kind of comes out of nowhere to a degree. Having said that, there's the assistants who flame out. There's your Adrian Griffins, who was like everyone's hot coach going into the year that he went to Milwaukee as like a Nick Nurse assistant. And then he was done in like,
I mean, Giannis picked Adrian Griffin and was dancing on his grave like 3 months later.
Yeah. So I think it's a safe pick. And I think there's some things that Mike Brown will bring that will be welcome in terms of like ball movement. His teams in Sacramento were always towards the top of the league and passes per game, assists per game, things like that. So I'm hoping that that's something that can sort of be baked into the Knicks, give them a little bit more kind of spark and spontaneity on the offensive end. I think he's got like the Fox Sabonis pairing is similar in a lot of ways to the Brunson Cat pairing in terms of like kind of skilled defensively challenged big and then like a scoring lefty guard. So I think he'll have some good ideas for how to use those two guys together on offense really effectively. And then I hope he starts a different starting lineup. That's like the flashpoint for Knicks fans with Tibbs is the that damn starting lineup from last year that was trotted out over and over again despite being mediocre. And I think what is going to have much more like realistically, Mike Brown is like a lateral move from Tibbs. Like they're both somewhere between like the 10th to 15th best coaches in the league, probably, or 10 to 20. They're in that like average to slightly above average range. Maybe like different voice, play the young guys more. Please play Pacome Dadier and like change the starting lineup, get a little bit more ball movement, and a weak Eastern Conference is enough for them to take that step from conference finals to finals. I think that's totally possible. Well, I think we'll have a bigger impact on their ceiling this year is the free agency moves they made. Getting Jordan Clarkson, who is just like a better version of Campaign, and Landry Shamet. And then getting Yabusele, who is like the real, golden goose, golden egg of this offseason, where I think he gives them a lot of lineup flexibility in terms of sometimes being able to slide him like to the 5. If, Mitch needs to get some rest, you can play him next to Mitch as a shooting option. You could honestly experiment with putting him in the starting lineup and getting like a real 5-out look with him and Towns next to each other. So I'm really excited to see what Yabu looks like and for the Knicks to have like a real legit 9-man rotation of guys who are like real proven players between their starting 5 last year, McBride, Mitch, Yabusele, and Clarkson. Like that's a hell of a lot better than when the bench last year was Mitch, McBride, and then like Campaign and Landry Shamet. Like that's just a massive upgrade at those 2 spots. And we've seen what depth does for teams in terms of giving them optionality, flexibility, and just more reliable guys when guys get hurt. So all that being said, don't think Brown is like a huge ceiling raiser as a coach, but he should do some things on a basic level that like can raise their offensive ceiling, and like the defenses should be fine. And then the depth pieces they picked up are probably going to be more impactful than the coaching change they made.
Yeah. My like brilliant idiot take with the recent team building trends, and I keep mentioning the CBA, is that like more than ever, 2 good players are better than 1.
Yeah.
And so like even if Cat is better than Julius Randle, which I think Cat was better than Julius Randle in the playoffs, all things considered. Yeah, he was. So. You still that the depth might be more important right now, unless it's like a real top of the line guy, which I don't believe Cat is just because of his defensive limitations. Mm-hmm. Like you might just want Randle and DiVincenzo more. It sure felt like the Knicks were just missing help, at the end of the rotation. You guys were worn so thin, even with great injury luck. It was like, God, we've been
lucky a few years in a row.
Campaign,
might get the medical staff. I don't know.
Yeah. But, I can't remember a Mike Brown series as impressive as the Tibbs Celtics. What are you doing with your head right now?
I'm knocking on wood vociferously. Sorry, continue.
I can't remember a Mike Brown series as impressive as the way the Knicks elevated against Boston this year. But if you want to get optimistic about Mike Brown, go back to the 2023 round 1 Kings Warriors. The Kings were the 3 seed, which was genuinely impressive that season, and took the defending champion Warriors to the brink. De'Aaron Fox hurts his hand. Otherwise, like they easily could have taken that series. Obviously, went 7. And the weird thing about this Tibbs year, as we've talked about on the pod, is like you have the Boston series, which was magnificent, but you also had like the Pistons series where the offense was stuck in mud and it felt like a lot of your turn, my turn. And that sort of offensive stickiness just was less common in at least Mike Brown's iteration of the Sacramento Kings. So like, I like that we're hearing that Rick Brunson is getting relegated. Maybe this is going to be a more democratic team with more depth that obviously still prioritizes the greatness of Jalen Brunson, but makes an effort to get other guys involved so that in the highest pressure moments, you have more options and there are fewer weak links that the ball can find. That's also a term I keep bringing up when it comes to playoff basketball. Like the ball seems to find weak links, and the most successful teams have really, really capable weakest links on offense. Yep. Let's predict the next dudes and teams to do certain stuff. It sounds weird, but it's pretty straightforward. I gave Max a list. We filled it out. I'm hoping we disagree on everything, but I know we won't because sometimes we think alike. Max, to start off, predicting the next ups. Tell me, who is the next guy in the NBA to be a first-time MVP? Who is the next guy in the NBA to be a first-time MVP winner?
Yeah, so I had 5 names I considered for this, and the tough thing is I think the odds would probably lean towards either SGA or Jokic winning it next year. So the question is, do I try to think of someone who would win it next year or someone who would win it down the line, which is sort of the conceit of this award here. So Luka was the one that popped into my head like off the top because he's a top 4 player. I think we can still say. I think he's definitely still top 4. Now people say like top 7 when they talk about him, which I think is ridiculous. But the problem is I don't think he's going to do it this year because I don't expect the Lakers to win enough games, although I am higher on them than consensus. But Luka is like the best player who has not won an MVP in the league. And he's gonna, if he gets close enough, I feel like he's gonna have the momentum of like it's his time in the same way that someone like Embiid did or Harden did back in the day, where it was like this guy has been close to the MVP so often. He's been the preseason favorite for it a number of times, and he's just like never gotten there for one reason or another. So I'm gonna say Luka. But I do think, maybe someone from the Eastern Conference could win it, like a Brunson or a Mitchell, although I think they're probably not quite the caliber of player that I think should win this award. But I'm going to go with Luka.
I had a list of 5 guys that I just like can see in my mind's eye having their sort of forever season. We talk about vintage wine bottles, like the Luka, put it up on the top shelf. The vintage Luka will always remember. And obviously, despite Luka's incredible success in his still young NBA career, he doesn't have the MVP yet. He was the first guy on my list. Wemby has to be on the list.
Yeah.
Because healthy Wemby last year was arguably a top 5 guy in the league. And by all accounts, he's, descended from the mountaintops and he's ready to go. I mean, his social media is the best in the league. He's not even trying.
Yeah.
If he is, he's good at pretending he isn't. Ant made my list.
Yep.
I wouldn't bet on it, but it's just a fact that Ant has the talent to win an MVP. It'll require a little bit more defensive consistency and a little bit more playmaking development. He can't be the same guy he was this year. I just think. Did you see the DeAndre Ayton quote? He said Luka's ripped.
I did see that.
So
it made me bump him up a couple spots.
Listen, I mean, DeAndre Ayton is the same guy who called himself dominating and as a 7-foot freak athlete averages 1 free throw attempt per game. So we can't take everything DeAndre Ayton says at face value.
He is ripped though, DeAndre Ayton.
Yeah. But it's all natural. And he said Luka's ripped. And that got me going a little bit because if this is actually the year that Luka put down the hookah, no hookah Luka, that is definitely worth keeping an eye on. Chubby Luka was one of the best on the planet. So Luka, Wemby, and I put down Cade Cunningham. He has the talent. The stars would need to align in a crazy way. A guy or two at the top would need to get hurt. But maybe as the Pistons continue to build, like Cade wins it in 2 or 3 years and still ends up the guy here. And then you can laugh, but I wrote down Ja Morant. And I'm sorry, I'm not saying this to trigger you. I still think Ja has a higher ceiling than guys like Brunson, Donovan Mitchell, just because of his facilitation gifts. Like Ja at Murray State and Ja at his core is still he's not the purest of point guards. He's not a relic by any stretch, but he's a better passer than those other semi undersized
Yeah,
like creators.
that's fair.
So if Ja could just stay out of his own way and stay healthy on a team that is going to continue to turn the Desmond Bain Hall into viable NBA players. And, obviously with Desmond Bain not there, there's even more usage for Ja to take on, which probably increases his chances of injury further. But yeah, I broke down Ja because Ja has a second team All NBA under his belt. We know the ceiling is still there, the athleticism is still there, and I just don't want to write off Memphis. I refuse to dismiss Memphis until this core is absolutely broken up. And I guess at this point the core is simply Ja and Jaren, but
Yeah.
I put down Ja because I think it's a 0.01% chance, but it's still in him. And then just in terms of sheer talent, Paolo Banchero. If the Magic, the Magic could be the 2 seed this year. Like they now have the pieces. Jalen Suggs is back. Desmond Bain's one of the best shooters on earth. Franz should only be better. He should be just as good as he was last year. Hopefully can figure out his shooting issues. But the Magic look like a defensive juggernaut again, and they have more offensive pop. I'm not the biggest fan of Paolo's play style just because of how much he dribbles and how long it takes for him to make decisions. But Paolo has MVP upside at his size, his movement skills, and just the physicality. And his shooting has improved, one mini step at a time. So if the Magic have a crazy regular season, which wouldn't blow my mind, Paolo is definitely far and away their best MVP candidate.
Yeah. I don't know if I ever see him hitting like the MVP point in his career. Like he's got the talent for it, but I feel like he's going to settle into that kind of like second tier superstar star kind of range of like the 6th to 13th best player in the league instead of that sort of top 5 that we tend to reserve the MVP for. But yeah, just to finish out my list, I had Luca, I had Wemby and Edwards as well, and then Brunson and Mitchell as like this East team in this horrible Eastern Conference next year. One of those teams wins like 63 games or something like that, and it's like, oh, we gotta put Jalen Brunson / Donovan Mitchell in MVP talks. I feel like Mitchell, like team people sort of recognize the Cavs as being a real collective where it's sort of like a whole is greater than the sum of its parts team. And they have really great parts as well, where I don't know if he would necessarily get the respect for the MVP. If the Knicks wins 60 plus games, it's going to be because they've, figured out the secret sauce to making their team, greater than the sum of its parts. And Brunson will probably have like a lower usage and just be more of a playmaker facilitator to a sort of well balanced offense in that case. But I could see it happening if they have like a dominant regular season next year and sort of take it from there. But I feel like Luca and Wemby are kind of the two most clear choices there.
The next team to win its first title with its current core. So basically the next new champion.
The next new champion. So once again, a little difficult because I think the two teams with the best chance to win the title next year are OKC and Denver, who've both already won with their current core. So I'm trying to balance next, like if a team wins it this year, who's the most likely new team to win it, which I think I'd probably lean Houston. But since I don't think Houston's going to win it this year, I'm going to lean or I could say Cleveland or New York as like an Eastern Conference team that makes it to the finals and like skates by due to some fortune falling their way or something like that, whether it's variance, injuries, shooting variance, whatever. So I'm torn between Cleveland, New York, and the Lakers. If the Lakers can figure out the sort of core around LeBron, Luka, you get MVP Luka. I don't think it would be this coming year, but maybe in a couple years. So I have to think about which one I'm going to pick. I'm like leaning Cleveland, but somehow I just like can't see them winning the title. Like it feels like everything's lining up for them, but somehow it just feels wrong. I can't pick New York because that's a homer pick, and you would be mad at me. So I'm honestly still thinking, but those are the teams that I was thinking about.
I think Cleveland is more likely to win the title than Denver, just because you've got to get through OKC in the West and a lot of other teams that would be the best team, or at least at the top of the East in the mix. I think, and like each round you can avoid OKC increases the chance that someone gets hurt.
Yeah.
They, 3-point variance. You just being in the East is incredibly valuable right now. So I had the Cavs up there, and in the West, I would go with Houston, just because they have so many young guys that could take leaps, whether it's Şengün, Amen Thompson, Tari Eason. Reed Shepherd hasn't even gotten going for them outside the G League, really.
Yeah.
Fred VanVleet found his 2019 Toronto magic a little bit for them in the Warriors series this year. They've got the Ime edge. You add KD to the fray, and he's, Jabari Smith's tall shooting guru now. They're just so deep. I think they're just going to be a nightmare to bang with for a 7-game series. And so I'm not picking them to beat OKC. There's no way I'll end up doing that. But Houston would be my second team in the West, I think, this year, early on at least.
Yeah, it's probably the right pick. And certainly, I think they're the most likely team for this year, or they're the best of the new teams for this year. But I'm wondering if the Lakers can have a good season and a half of team building around them, where they can have a last hurrah with Bron, and be 2027 NBA champs or something like that. I don't find that outside the realm of possibility, but yeah. Kind of popping out.
We should talk about the Lakers just a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't like DeAndre Ayton at all. He was extremely lazy as a Blazer. We paid him $30 million a year, and he didn't act like it. But scaled down, I think Zach Lowe made a really good point that even though Ayton hasn't been a lob threat really the last few years of his career, I think Luka will turn him into one, because Luka's that good and Ayton's still that athletic and has great hands. It's awesome for them to be able to get him for 10 mil or whatever the number was.
Yeah.
It's a slight catastrophe for Portland that they had to pay him to leave. And if that doesn't convince you that he's not the best guy to have in your locker room, I don't know what will. There are a lot of well-meaning Portland beat writers right now saying Ayton was nothing but nice to everyone around the team, blah, blah, blah. And I believe that. I don't think he's a malicious person, but the front office felt like he was a poor influence on their young team, and they just wanted him out. They said, we just want to spin the wheel on Klingon, Young Hansen. Maybe we're keeping Robert Williams. We like that big man room more without DeAndre Ayton, which tells you a lot. But as the fourth or fifth best player on the Lakers, of course I'd sign up for that. And it's just interesting to me, all the LeBron talk. It's hard to discern whether this is typical LeBron or something's really going on and he wants to go somewhere else. I mean, Bronny must be sweating bullets right now, even though you said he was the best guy on the floor at the California Classic.
For 10 minutes.
We need Dalton Connect to show up a little bit, but call me crazy. Luka, Austin Reeves, DeAndre Ayton, Rui Hachimura,
that should be a top 5 offense. That should be a top 5 offense.
It's a pretty good setup. And I love the Adu Thero pick. I don't know if he's going to be able to contribute significantly as a rookie. He might be in sort of that Peyton Watson mold of really athletic, explosive wings who just need some time to polish offensively before they can be a playoff difference maker. But like the Lakers are sitting pretty right now. And
Yeah.
again, like if we get 2024 playoff Luka, all bets are off. It doesn't even really matter if LeBron is there. Like Luka will find a way to make that team a threat in any series. And like it was a pretty depressing Luka experience against Minnesota. And I know we can't expect Luka to beat teams single handedly, but it sure felt like he was doing that at times in Dallas. And so like if Luka's in shape, if dominating is being real with us, the Lakers are very much, a giant hiding in plain sight.
Yeah. They picked up Laravia as well, like 6'8".
Oh yeah, I love that. I love that get for them. I'm not saying he's going to be a revelation for them, but I think that's an amazing flyer to take.
Yeah.
I was surprised that Memphis was so fine letting go of Laravia. I guess they have a lot of dudes, but like I think he can shoot and he's a decent defender and he's like a high IQ guy. I wouldn't be surprised if Jake Laravia is like a surprise, like, oh, they actually kind of need to play him 25 minutes in playoff games, and not because they have no depth, but because he's a savvy basketball player who can guard multiple positions.
Yeah, exactly. So basically they took their team last year and they turned Finney-Smith into Laravia and Ayton, which I think is an upgrade. Like Finney-Smith was really valuable for them in terms of wing defense, but I'm not going to put this team in the class of Houston, Denver, and OKC, but I'd probably give them the next best odds to make the conference finals in the West. Yeah. Like if you're getting in shape, motivated Luka, which all the sort of offseason pictures and dominating quotes lead us to believe, I don't really understand why LeBron is so upset with the situation. Like if he is as upset as the reports are saying, I don't see him going to many other places where he's got like a much better chance of winning. Like, I guess if he goes to if he just was like dropped into the Cavs or the Knicks, like, yeah, but if you like put together the pieces it would take to trade for him, those teams aren't that much better than what the Lakers have right now. So yeah, I think there's been too much hand wringing about the Lakers, and they're fine.
LeBron is a billionaire, but he exercised his right to opt in. And now he can't be traded to a team that I think we'd view as a real contender going into the season. Like I think the Lakers are his best situation now that he opted in. And I don't blame him, because if he took like a vet min in Cleveland, it would have felt a little bit icky. And I don't know. It probably would have been beautiful and history would have forgotten it if he won a second title in Cleveland. What am I saying? But it's not what happened. And the Lakers are not in bad shape by any stretch.
Yeah. All right.
We should mention for the Houston thing, like, I think Reed Shepherd, our guy, is underratedly important for them, because they still have some shooting concerns. They got KD, they got Finney-Smith, like that's huge. Two guys who have been consistent 3-point shooters for a while now. But again, when Amen Thompson, Tari Eason, and Şengün are so important to your DNA, like you just need almost everyone else to be respected at the 3-point line.
Yeah.
And it'll be interesting to see what they look like. Can they be a more fluid offense, or are they going to have some of the same issues we saw last year?
Yeah, their GM came out and said it. Like he was in a press conference, Raphael Stone. He was like dead ass serious. We need Reed Shepherd to be good for us this year. Like he fully came out and said it. So yeah, I agree, and I'm excited to see what he looks like, because I think I really liked him in the draft last year, and I just think he can be really good for them. Even though guards take a little while, I think he can be good.
The next first-time Finals MVP.
Yes. So, had a lot of similar thoughts to my next, sort of dovetailing off the first team to win its first title. I was really tempted, and I might just say it, to say J-Dub.
Yeah, he was my pick. And when I said we were going to be thinking similarly, I knew that was the one.
Yeah. Just because, I watched his vlog today about how he was playing with the torn ligament in his wrist for the entire playoffs. And that does explain some of like his inconsistent shooting. Also makes the moment of him hitting that clutch 3 against Denver and then screaming at his wrist, a all-time legendary moment. I just love that. So really tempted to pick J-Dub, but SGA is like so damn good that I'm trying to think of the scenario in which J-Dub wins Finals MVP. It's like the other team just sells out,
Yeah.
doubling Shea every possession, and J-Dub like coasts to like similar to how Jaylen Brown won it over Tatum, where J-Dub coasts to like 30 points a game against like scrambling defenses.
I thought about J Dub for a second as the potential next first time MVP.
Woo!
I was like, what if Shea
Oh,
got hurt? God forbid, love SGA, but what if he got hurt and the Thunder still won 60 plus games and he was their best player?
yeah.
But I don't think he's quite good enough for that. Like, I do, and who knows? Who knows how good J Dub is going to get? He's so damn young still, but I couldn't get there, but I could get there as a Finals MVP. He could outplay SGA right now. I mean, he wasn't that far from it, and he obviously had a 40-point, like masterpiece that no matter what he does from here on out will be one of the nights of his career. So J Dub was my pick. Did you want to mention anyone else, or should we keep moving?
Mitchell and Brunson again as
Yeah.
the obligatory like Eastern Conference by default winners.
Yeah.
If they manage to win the finals, I could see either one of those guys winning it. If Houston wins it, I think Durant is the most likely Finals MVP because I still think he's the best player on that team. And if they're winning, it means he's probably doing a lot of clutch scoring for them. But again, there's a case where maybe Şengün or Amen could like sneak one out. And then Luka was the other one that came to mind. But that probably wouldn't be this year. It would be like in a couple of years or something like that. So it's tough because again, I think SGA and Jokic are like very likely to win some of the next Finals MVPs. But yeah, I'm kind of going to go J-Dub too. I like that.
Yeah. I actually got kind of excited thinking about Şengün as potentially the most likely Houston name, because what if they just end up their best lineup being Şengün, three great shooters, and Amen Thompson, and sort of some of the Şengün limitations, like his floaters he kept relying on against Golden State.
Yeah, and by the way, people compare Şengün as like a baby Jokic to Jokic, and like obviously the big differentiator is the passing, but the other slept on like just amazing thing about Jokic that Şengün doesn't have is that like floater shot from the free throw line and down where Jokic makes it like 65% of the time, and that's kind of how he breaks basketball because he can just get an easy 2 points 60% of the time whenever he wants, basically. And Şengün needs to add that to his game, where he's never going to be the visionary passer that Jokic is, but if he can add that like really high efficiency floater to his game, it's totally going to open up a lot of his scoring. Were there any other names you thought about that you haven't mentioned, or is that everyone?
No, let's do next first time defensive player of the year. 2024 was Evan Mobley, which I was pretty pumped about. So he is off the list. Who did you have besides Wemby and Chet?
I was about to say Victor Wembanyama.
Yeah.
Wemby, Chet, and Amen Thompson are the three most likely defensive player of the year winners. And I think probably, I haven't thought about it too hard, the three best defensive players in the league. I haven't thought about it too hard, but I think I'd probably say those three.
Yeah. I think you're projecting Amen to like carry his momentum from the second half of last year and also improve a little bit. But I can't hate it. I can't hate it because Amen's ceiling with his athleticism is probably a cut above almost any other wing you could pick. I mean, I had those three names first. I wrote down Bam Adebayo, who's, made a couple all defense teams. He, is probably going to have a little more help this year with Norman Powell in the mix. Davion Mitchell set to be like one of the new Heat culture. Of course, he's pretty valuable now in Miami.
Yeah.
I don't think Davion Mitchell is going to be like an offensive beast, but I think he's going to be an awesome Heat guy. I loved watching him as a member of the Heat last year. Jalen Suggs, maybe like the Marcus Smart, like switchable, can guard up, can guard down, steals a defensive player of the year. OG Anunoby, I wrote down.
Yeah.
He has a chance again. East, what if the Knicks win 60 plus games and, have a quality defense in large
Top
part
10.
just because he's doing OG stuff.
Yeah. It would probably be Amen or OG as like the best sort of wing defender. Probably Suggs as the best guard. Suggs or Daniels as like the best guard defender, and then Wemby and Chet as just like the vacuum cleaners on the back end, where Wemby is like the absolute unicorn of ground coverage and blocking guys at the rim and just taking away the rim. And then Chet is like 85 to 90% of that, where like if Wemby didn't exist, I feel like I've mentioned this before, but you've talked about how if Steph Curry didn't exist, we would think of Dame Lillard as like the all-time witch doctor of shooting in the way that Steph is. And I feel like Chet is kind of that to Wemby in a lot of ways, where his body and freakishness and blend of rim protection and offensive skill are absolutely freakish. It's just that Wembanyama exists, so it looks sort of more normal in comparison. But yeah, those three I would expect to rack up a number of Defensive Player of the Year trophies between them. And honestly, I think I might say Chet as my pick, because I think Wemby's going to have a lot of momentum, but there's health risks with both of them. But especially because, with the Thunder having an all-time great defense this past year, but not really having anyone in the running for Defensive Player of the Year because Caruso missed too many games, Chet missed too many games. Dort kind of was a little bit in the running, but I think is probably not as valuable of a defender as those two guys. If Chet has like a full season and the Thunder are once again like a historically great defense, I could see him winning it.
Yep. I'm buying my Bam Adebayo stock. We're going to do stock buying as a segment, I think, next episode. Hopefully we'll get Coach Gottnick on the pod again. He's elusive.
Don't run, Coach.
We're going to do it. It's like trying to grab a fish out of the water, but with your bare hands. Bam Adebayo was underqualified for the offensive burden he took on last year. And I'm not going to lie, as a Bam lover, it was ugly. Like just way too many mid-range pull-ups. And he's not one of these like top of the line superstars who can make those efficiently enough that he should be taking them at high volume. I want to see Bam asked to do a little bit less scoring creation, bucket getting on offense, and more of all the special switchability, secondary creation, dribble handoff stuff that made him one of my favorite players in the league. All right. The next first time all NBA guy. Who you got?
I'm going to go. I mean, there's the obvious Wemby, which maybe can just be put to the side. I'm going to say Franz.
For everything.
I'm going to say Franz Wagner. You mentioned Paolo for MVP, and I think Paolo is a decent shout here as well, but I just think Franz is better right now. And if the Magic have like, a high 50s win season in this week East and are, a top 3 seed, top 2 seed, I think Franz is going to be a huge part of that. He's got some strides to make, but all of the impact metrics say that he's way more valuable to Orlando's success than Paolo has been to this point, even though Paolo's the more talented player. And yeah, I just think he's going to be like all-star starter probably, especially with a lot of the injuries in the East. I can see that happening. I think he's probably one of the 5 best players in the East. I haven't thought about it too hard, but he's up there. And
he certainly was in that early period of Paolo being hurt.
Yeah.
When he was shooting pretty well, even with that weird hitch in his shot, like Franz was absolutely on one for many weeks early on in Paolo's injury last season. And he needs to find that again. Like, again, this team really has a chance in the East if they get that version of Franz, the version of Desmond Bane we've seen in recent years, and a more efficient Paolo Banchero. Jalen Suggs is back. Like, I'd have really high hopes going into the season in Orlando. It goes without saying, like they traded KCP and 4 first-round picks for Desmond Bane, and the time is now.
Yeah. So yeah, I'd say Franz.
I had Tyrese Maxey. Bam Adebayo, I will keep mentioning.
Has he never made All-NBA?
Never made a third team, believe it or not.
Wow.
I actually,
Even when,
I
even when it
forgot.
was centers.
I forgot that Paolo's never made it a third team. So
Yeah.
thank you for pointing that out. Jaren Jackson also never made a third team. He's won Defensive Player of the Year. He's been an All Star, but he's never won. He's never made an All NBA team. And then a dark horse, you can roll your eyes. I wrote down Denny Avdia. He got so much better last year that we just can't quite write it off.
Wow.
Shout out Denny Avdia. All right. Last but not least, the next star who was picked in the second round. And before I pass this to you, we're going to do just a little rundown. How great some of these second round steals have been in recent memory. Obviously, the most famous one, probably the best one of all time, Nikola Jokic at 41, Taco Bell commercial, 2014 draft. We've got Draymond in 2012 at pick 35, Brunson 2018 at pick 33. Pascal Siakam was close. He was picked 27th. I wasn't quite sure about that one. Unfortunately, didn't make the cut. Picked 27th in 2016. More recently, we've got Nembhard was picked 31st in 2022. And whether or not Nembhard is a quote star, he's obviously like one of the baddest men on the planet in a high leverage playoff game. I still think about that step back, like tween Hezi 3 hit going into halftime, like to take the lead after the Halliburton injury.
Yeah.
Nembhard's such a bad man. And then Toumani Camara, 2023, picked 52nd overall. He's getting paid now. It's no secret. He's one of the best defenders on earth. But I just wanted to mention him because he's not a star yet, and he's shown so much offensive growth that Toumani Camara could go down as one of the bigger second round steals if he continues on this trajectory.
Yeah. Honestly, when I was going through this, like, it's shocking how many of the second round picks from the last few years are just like fully out of the league already.
Yeah.
Like, second round picks have such a short runway to kind of prove they can stick with how deep the league is now. And maybe it's always been like this, but it feels like they used to have a little bit more than they do now, where it's like, I was looking at the second round from 2023, I think, and it was like, there were like two guys who were still alive and kicking. Nembhard is the obvious pick if we're talking stars. And I thought his stats would be better than they were. He's like a 10, 5, and 2 guy. So he does kind of remind me of Brunson in Dallas, like early Brunson in Dallas. And he's young too. Like, he was in the 2022 draft. He just finished his third season. Is that right? 22, 23, 3, 4, 4, 5. He just finished his third season in the NBA. And he was like a 4-year player in college. So he was a multi-year player in college. So he's older. But Nembhard, he's going to be the starting point guard for Indiana this year. Like,
it's a good point.
I was trying to think through what Indiana's team is going to be this year. Because I was thinking of some of their guys for the stocks thing that we're going to do next time. I think they're going to be starting Nembhard, Nesmith, Mathurin, Siakam, and then like one of their centers, either Jay Huff or Isaiah Jackson, something like that. Not a murderer's row compared to what they've had in the past with Halliburton and Miles Turner, but Nembhard, and maybe Rick Carlisle adjusts the scheme now that Halliburton is out, but Nembhard playing that up and down fast-paced style, like, he's going to be their starting point guard. And I think if Indy kind of exceeds expectations and surprises, and like at the All-Star break is a 6 or 7 seed, I could see him making the All-Star team as like a guy averaging, is 18 and 7, that out of the realm of possibility for him with the way that Indiana plays and how many sort of possessions they get in a game. So his defense is really good. He's an absolute gamer, as you said. Like, I don't care how many shots he misses. He was always the guy on their team who like, I won't say scared me the most, but like I was very scared of him in a way that like I was scared of, well, Derek White was the one I was scared of the most on Boston, but in a similar way where when the ball gets swung to him at the end of the clock, you're like, oh God. So Nemhard is the obvious pick in terms of a guy who I think can be a star of recent second round picks who hasn't gotten there yet. I do have some other guys who I think could be impact players in the near term future, but I'll pass it to you if you have anyone else you want to mention as like a star.
Oh yeah, like Nemhard has already been so valuable that of course he needed to be mentioned, but like I wasn't gonna have him as my official pick. I'm just gonna steal a guy that I know you'd want to mention, Adu Thero.
Yeah.
Uh, Again, we're talking about guys now who we would bet on to just stick in the league. Like the star thing is crazy. You get like one every other year. You get like an actual like high level starter out of the second round. And so like basically one out of 60 dudes, if you do the math, like the last 13 years. AJ Mitchell, we both love.
Yep.
I had him at 20 last year.
I had him 19.
They got him at 38. Fuck, I guess you are the AJ Mitchell guy on the pod.
Let's go.
The steal at 38 in the 2024 draft. AJ Mitchell, Micah, OKC correspondent for the Borsterk podcast, texted us today that AJ Mitchell has officially graduated from summer league status. He's too damn good. He's one of these guys who might actually have some sneaky, like massive upside just because of his genius understanding of pace and how to create advantages without trying so hard. Like he looks a little different from everyone else at summer league. His movement patterns are unique. I always say he looks like he has like this chicken wing offhand that looks like he's holding a purse. But just understands timing. There's a musicality to his driving game. And his shooting has really come together over the last year or two, including his last year at Santa Barbara, I think it was.
Yeah.
So AJ Mitchell is definitely near the top of this list.
Yeah, I had him as my next pick, and I actually comped him to Andrew Nemhard coming out, so fitting. But yeah, I love his overall skill level. Like and he didn't get a chance to play a ton last year because he got hurt. But I liked what I saw at the beginning of the year. Dagnall trusted him enough to throw him out in the first quarter of a finals game, which was probably a little crazy.
Yeah.
But I've mentioned on past pods talking about the Thunder this year that like one of their weaknesses last year was initiation and like playmaking outside of SGA and J-Dub, and specifically like offensive initiation off the bench. And I think Mitchell could provide a big boost there this year in year two as a guy who can just like score from three levels, play make, and just run an offense at a high level and like be very efficient at it. So yeah, Mitchell is a guy who, I comped him to Nemhard. I thought he had like whiffs of Reeves as well in terms of like his skill, his craft, his change of pace. So he was the next guy on my list.
Yeah, you watch AJ Mitchell and you're just like, that is an artist. I don't know how good he's going to be at the NBA level, but he understands the game at an absurd like level. He's operating on like a 10-year vet wavelength, it feels like. Nemhard, we mentioned, maybe becomes like a guard Jimmy Butler over the next decade. Who knows? Just a guy whose regular season box score stats will never do his postseason value justice. Thero I had in the early 20s. Lakers get him this year at 36. We both just love the upside with how hard he plays. Engine plus explosive athleticism equals we want him on our team. I
could
know
be OG could be OG if he learns how to shoot.
Agreed. If you ask a bunch of like front office people, I bet the name Gigi Jackson would come up, but that's a guy we both agree on. It's just like not a winning player long term. But hey, like crazier attitude adjustments have happened. And I've been watching a lot of Gigi in summer league. He still has the 6'8", 6'9" frame with like awesome athleticism, and he's not scared. So he's worth mentioning because the Grizzlies got him in 2023 with the 45th pick. He was injured most of last year, and I think he's going to be in the rotation now.
Yeah.
Ryan Kalkbrenner picked 34th this year. I had him in the late teens. He is a Charlotte Hornet. And the thing with Kalkbrenner, I think he's going to stick just because he's a really reliable, massive, like 7'2" drop big. He shows a little bit of shooting hope. And if he starts making threes, there is a believable path to Brook Lopez territory.
Yeah.
but it's a long shot, as it is with all of these names. Jonathan Mobo. I wanted to
Crossed
make
my
you
mind.
smile. Yeah. Unique player, just interesting archetype. Really good with the ball in his hands. Can't shoot for shit, but is a switchable defender and like high feel, versatile wing slash forward.
Yeah, I called him the love child of Boris Diaw and Kenneth Farid in my draft notes last year.
Yeah. He's a dog rebounder. He'll just put up some like cool like box scores where he'll get like 6 points, 13 rebounds, 4 assists, a couple stocks. Adem Bona, I wrote down.
Hmm.
Maybe he's more than just an energy big off the bench, because he's so athletic that he could turn into one of the better like switchable bigs in the league,
Mhm.
and is a violent finisher at the rim. And then the last name I had down was one of the shocks of last year's class, at least in the when it came to like rookie production, Jalen Wells,
Yeah.
on the Grizzlies. 3-and-D, but is putting the ball on the deck more in summer league, as he's like, sort of the elder statesman now and the guy that produced last year and has been like the go-to wing for the Grizzlies summer league team. Jalen Wells' path to like being an all-time great second round pick is like nuclear shooting. And
Yeah.
he's a great shooter. He took on a lot of their toughest defensive assignments last year, which was genuinely shocking to me because the Grizzlies looked like a deep team coming into the year, deal with a couple injuries as they always seem to do. And suddenly Jalen Wells is like slotted into the starting lineup for a playoff team. But Jalen Wells was a steal, whether or not he gets much better than he was as a rookie. They got him at 39 last year.
Yeah. Only other guy to mention is Aaron Wiggins, 55th pick from a few years ago.
Oh, good one.
Who, I mean, everyone knows about him from the Thunder's run this year, but good chance that, well, I don't know actually. I think his role is going to be the same next year. He played, honestly, he contributed less than I thought he would in the playoffs. He like had some moments and some big games where he carried them for quarters offensively, and he has a level of kind of creativity as a scorer off their bench that a lot of the guys on their team don't have, and they're sort of like executing the offense and being like great team players. He's a guy who can sort of get into his bag in a way that most guys on their team can't, to create against sort of set defenses. And there's moments where like you squint in your eyes and he's doing these like crazy dribble moves into spins, and you sort of double take and wonder if it was Shea or not. Like obviously he's nowhere near Shea, but he has those moments as a mover and a ball handler. So I mean, ultimately, I don't think he's reaching star potential unless he's like on another team with much higher usage. But I do think he can continue to grow within his role and become like a more consistent offensive contributor for an already really good team. Plus, he's on an insane contract, as we like to mention every time we bring him up. But yeah, the other names you mentioned everyone. I had written down Nemhard, AJ Mitchell, and Aaron Wiggins. Crazy that the Thunder have two of them, and then Adu Thiro as well, who I had. I think 20th, and the Lakers got him, traded up to get him in the second round. And yeah, I love Thero. He's just like an offensive dynamo with a jetpack strapped to his back and wants to kill everyone in his path to the rim and rip the rim off every time he goes to the basket. If he could just learn how to shoot. It's not like he's a terrible shooter. He's a bad shooter, but he's not like, it's not broken. So if he can just be a passable shooter, he's going to stick. And if he's a good shooter, if he works at that, he does have, as I said, OG level upside.
I love the Aaron Wiggins shout. He is a 50, 39, 80 career guy. He's 26 years old. I'm not sure it's the biggest compliment in the world, but I'm pretty sure he could average like 17 a game for the Nets. He probably averaged 20 when Shea was out this year. Every time Shea had to miss a game for whatever reason, which wasn't that often, I'd text Micah like, all right, here's 25 from Aaron Wiggins, bank it. Awesome shooter. But like you said, there's more to his game than that. Like can legitimately put it on the deck and finish with touch. He's got some of that SGA like reach finishes to his bag.
Yeah, You're spot on. It was only 6 games, and a lot of them are like end of season against like tanking teams. But caveats aside, in 6 games without SGA, Aaron Wiggins averaged 25, 6, and 4.
There you
So,
go. Yeah. We both wanted Danny Wolf here, but because
Danny,
he fell. He fell. He really fell this year. He ended up getting picked by the Nets at 27. If Danny Wolf had fallen to the second round, I would have penciled him in. I would have penned him in Sharpie for this category.
yeah.
But he didn't quite make it. Those are my second round steals to watch.
Yeah, kind of hate where Danny Wolf ended up.
Yeah.
But yeah. Oh, one other one while I'm looking through, who I just saw live in person at the California Classic and was the first person to be retired from the California Classic. Pelle Larsson is a name to keep an eye on as like a potential. You mentioned Davion Mitchell as like a heat culture. How did they find this guy? Keep an eye on Pelle Larsson. He like didn't do that much last year, but he was way better than everyone else at the California Classic, which is a low bar. But I think it's possible that he's a real contributor for them at some point in the next couple of years.
When you're doing your Larson bit, it means it's time to wrap things up. We've officially hit after hours.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on Bronny? Did Bronny look to you like a legitimate NBA rotation guy, or was he just playing against college guys?
He looked better than I expected him to. Like he did, he was legitimately. He only played half of the game in the game that I saw him play in because I guess he's coming back from some sort of injury. I did think he was like the best player on the court in that stretch. His defense popped. He was making Yakuchonis really uncomfortable with his ball pressure. His shot looked really good. In warmups, his shot looked good too. Like it's a very pure, compact release. Like I think he's going to be a good shooter. So if he's just like like an athletic 3-and-D guard, I do think he has a chance of sticking as a player that way, which, as we said, like there's not that many second round picks who stick as like quality rotation players. So if he does that, that's a hell of an outcome for the 55th overall pick. I'd say he impressed me. Like the athleticism, I had a front row seat to his one big dunk where he like took off, floated in the air and hammered it down. Everyone was saying, oh, the genetics kicked in. And it was very impressive. Like that was a really impressive play. So yeah, I thought like athletically he could hang. He's a really good athlete. The shot looked good. Like he looked better than Dalton Knecht in the games that I saw. Obviously, Dalton Knecht's a better player, better prospect for this upcoming season. But I don't think he's a lost cause. I do think there's something there.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean he's insanely athletic for 6'3". Like guys aren't supposed to be cocking it back in transition like Bronny does. All right, that's all we got. This has been the Borsterk podcast. Wait, last question. When did you realize you were meeting Bronny's agent?
Yeah.
Was it after the conversation?
No, it was like during the conversation. I was literally, to this more after hours content, but I was walking around the court and I saw a guy. I was like just trying to introduce myself to people with media badges on.
Yeah.
So I saw like one guy who I'd seen on the bus ride over, who I think we might end up having on the pod at some point. He covers the Lakers. And then there was this other guy who was just kind of like walking around sitting by himself, who had a media badge on, kind of a young guy, probably in his 20s, I would guess. And I walked over to him. I was like, hey, just introducing myself. Like literally, I was like, I'm just introducing myself to media people, trying to like meet people. Like, who do you work with? Like, who are you affiliated with? And he was like, oh, I'm with Clutch Sports. And I was like, oh, like the agency? He was like, yeah. I was like, oh, are you an agent? And he said, yep. And I said, are you representing anyone in the game today? He said, yep. I said, who? He said, Bronny. And I was like, oh, cool.
Yeah. The most famous guy by far.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah. Also, all the kids love Bronny. Like he was the only person who had any semblance of like motion, of just like every time he checked in, every time he walked by, all the kids would just scream like Bronny. But yeah.
This has been the Borsterk podcast. Let us know if we should rebrand. I mean, the name obviously is near and dear to us at this point, but Doris Burke is firmly past her prime. And more importantly, people can't really spell or remember our name as easily as I might like them to. So if you have any thoughts, maybe it's time to shake things up. Either way, we love you, and we'll be back soon. Peace.
Boris Dirk.